Hey there everyone, I'm building a new project which I'm pretty excited about. I'm turning this Longstrike, this Whiteout Longstrike, into a HPA powered, just awesome monstrosity. And I thought I'd film it as I go along just to put another video out there to help you guys that are kind of interested in HPA and getting into it. I've taken a lot of advice from Cobber Crazy's videos in Australia, so I might not be doing revolutionary stuff here, but like I say, just another guide for you guys to see how the whole HPA thing is done. So let's take a look inside. So I've already taken most of the bits out of here because you don't really need them, but I think I'll start just by showing you the components I have and how it works from going to from the air tank to firing a dart. And then I'll go over the parts in more detail to explain them. So first of all, the line from my paintball tank is going to attach to this device here at the bottom. That then travels through to the valve, which you're going to place underneath the trigger. Brilliant. That then has to travel into your air tank. And I have another just elbow joint here to fit that in. Your air tank sits here. Then you have your brass. Ooh, telescoping. There we go. So your brass is going to sit inside and go into your air tank. Because this the bolt sled here is actually able to move around without hitting the air tank because it's so small. So I'm going to keep this and use that to load new darts. So I have a bigger piece of brass which is just going to sit over here. Then I can make a brass breech and use katana mags. So I basically open and close the breech and then just pull this and it will release the air tank and fire the dart. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go through just a few of the main parts and explain some of the important details about them. I think the most important thing is this tank. This is, was it a Busby Ultimate Missile Blast? Oh, I'm going to be silly if I've got the wrong thing. Sorry, Extreme Blastzuka, made by Busby. If you can find one of these, which will be easy in America but really hard in England. This is the air tank that's inside of it. I've chopped off the orange barrel and I've chopped off the pump. But this one is small enough that you can fit it inside the shell and still use the bolt sled. People have made HPA Longstrikes with other air tanks, but it means you have to cut the shell, which I think is kind of more ugly, so I didn't want to do that. So you either have to find one of these, or Spencer in Australia has made the new SPEXBZ, which is basically a machined metal version of this, which is going to be more readily available once he does another run. So I'd look out for those. Alright, the next important part is your valve here. This is basically going to control when you fire, and it's called a quick exhaust valve. Because when you press this button, it's going to cut off the air supply that's coming in. It's then going to vent this air into the atmosphere, and because of the way these things work, it pulls something shut and fires off the tank. These are the ones that are recommended because they're so small and just brilliant. They're made by a company called Clippard, and it's called the NMJV03, and I'll try and put a link for that in the description. These are harder to get, and I had to wait about 4 weeks of shipping, so I'd probably order these quickly if you want to do a project in the near future, unless you are in Australia or America somewhere, but that's what I had to do in England. It doesn't come with these push-fit connectings. I bought those and just screwed them in. And I think, well, this is the part that attaches to the air hose on my paintball tank, and I think this is a pretty standard connection. unless you've got something that looks dramatically different from this. I don't think the size varies too much, but I'd always just ask the store you buy them from. But that's simply from the paintball tank into a push fit. Okay, so I think where I need to start is with the tank here. Like I said, I cut some of the bits off already, which I sadly didn't catch on camera. But at the back here is the normal release button for when this is in its original blaster, and I basically had to cut that off and shave it down until I get to a wall here. I didn't expect you to follow that explanation, but I'm going to link Cobble Crazy's video, the guy in Australia, and he explains this very well, this step. But basically I've cut that down because I just need the tank. I don't need any of the firing stuff on the original tank. It doesn't work in exactly the same way as the valve does. But what I do need to do is find a way of attaching the air hose into the back of here. So what I'm doing is I've got some sort of kind of PVC end cap that will fit on the end here. That's going to glue in place, and then I'm taking a elbow joint, just a standard part, doesn't have to be special, and I'm going to be drilling a hole and screwing that in. Then I can attach the air hose to this and to the rest of my parts. Now this is a bit too big just because of what the standard sizes are, and you can find some other sizes of pipe to fit in here and then kind of sand it down a bit so that you get a really good fit, but I just decided to 3D print a small ring because it was such a thin bit. This isn't gonna take loads so much, so I'll explain, but that doesn't matter. So basically I just slide this over here, and now this fits on more snugly, and I'll basically be putting a ton of epoxy resin all in there to make sure that it's not going to leak. You definitely want to use stuff that is going to take at least a day to cure, things like that, because this tank is going to be taking a lot of pressure, so it's better just to be safe rather than your blaster exploding on you. Right, so I've got my end cap, and I'm going to start by drilling a hole through the centre. So I'm just going to mark out where the centre is. It doesn't really matter if it's exactly central, I don't think, so no worries. Right, safety specs on, I'm going to use power tools. I'm going to start by making a small hole just to then guide the bigger drill bit, so that goes through easier. I should probably drill into something so I don't destroy my desk. Right, that's better. A pillar drill would be lovely, but I don't have one of those. Alright, onto the big boy. Okay, I had to find a way to clamp that down so I could drill it safely. Don't keep going if you see happening what happened to me with it catching, that's just dangerous. I would have liked to have a 9mm drill bit, but this is only an 8mm. I only had an 8mm, so this isn't exactly going to screw in. So I'm just going to have to do a bit of filing to widen this hole. Alright, so I've screwed this in, and as you can tell it's really tight, which is good because we want an air seal. Obviously I'm still going to put glue all over it. So the next step is I'm going to put some epoxy around here, And then I'm also going to put some epoxy in here, but being very careful not to get it inside the extra elbow joint, because then that would block up the whole system. Alright, I'm just going to be slightly scratching up the inside of this so that the epoxy bonds to it better, because it's pretty smooth at the moment. Right, I normally wear gloves when using epoxy resin. Right, so I've made enough space to fit the valve in here, but now I need to figure out how the airline is going to come through this part where the stock actually goes and into the tank, and also somehow fit it through here as well. I think you can cut a hole like in half of it and find a way through, so I'll just figure that out now. Okay, I'm going to put in the external connection to the line coming from my paintball tank. I think I'm going to have to take out the screw post here, because otherwise I need to cut into the stock, and that's just a bit of hassle. So I think I'm just going to mark it out here and then drill a hole and use epoxy putty to fix that in place. Okay, new shirt, new day, and I finished off fitting this guy into the handle. So let's have a look at that. So that sits in there quite nicely now, just in there. And I was saying earlier that this orange piece is sort of in the way between here and the valve. So what I've done is I've cut a little channel in here and cut again a kind of little trough out here so that a piece of tube can go in between the two. Right, push that on. There we go, so that should fit in there ish. I haven't epoxied it in yet, but it will soon. And then this can just go over top. Okay, and screw in. So already that's held in place pretty well. And then what you also have to do is take a little cut out the stock so that it just fits over there. So what I've done here is I've cut this side out, because the tube is more towards the right, and left as much as I could, so that will still fit in nicely, no problem. Okay, you might also have seen that I have Dremeled out so much of the inside of the shell here in order to fit the tank in place, and also a lot here, just that took a while, and I've got it to fit in place now, but I've had to shave the sides here a bit as well to get it to fit because it's so tight. Just give you a good look there, just to give me a little more clearance, and it just about closes now. So this fits about there, and again I had to get the tube going through this orange piece, so what I've done is I've just drilled some holes in the middle there, and here we go. I have cut a piece of air hose already. I just sort of pop that through the middle. Actually, I'll do it this way. Pop that over. For the moment I'm just shoving the tube into the elbow joint, but I'll make that more secure later on. Although it still fires like this actually, which I find quite funny. Come on. Sorry. There we go. It's all a bit fiddly, but it does fit. So screw that in. And technically if I hook this up now, this will work. Okay, and the next thing I did is I've taken the inside of the tank here and I've ever so slightly filed it out, and before you do this, if you want, I put some tape over the end to make sure I didn't get lots of bits inside the tank, which you should definitely do. But I've winded it just slightly so that it can just about take some 9/16 brass, and all I'm doing is I'm going to glue that in place, chop it there, just so then I can easily have a coupler that will slide in the 17/32 brass whenever I want. But before I move on to the brass breech, I'm going to epoxy putty these two things in place. So I've got some epoxy putty, just comes in little bits like this, but obviously you can use any brand you like. Okay, so I've temporarily fixed the tank in place with hot glue just so that I know it's roughly central and it's not going to go anywhere. So now I'm going to try and make the brass breech, and this is the first one I've ever done. So I'm going to put this in here. I've got that bigger piece of brass, so that slides in now and makes an air seal. I think I'm going to wrap some electrical tape around this part of the brass to keep that central. I'm then going to put the katana mag whole thing in and mark out where I need to cut away the brass.
I've got this piece of brass cut, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to make the bigger sleeve that goes over top of it that will come out of the way and then chamber the dart. Now, most of the time when people put air tanks on Longstrikes, they have to reverse the way they prime. Well, basically, priming hand is back here, and they have to go forwards and then backwards to chamber the dart, which is backwards to normal, which I could get used to, but I think I might be able to make it work the normal way because I'm only chambering half-length darts. So I'm just going to try and figure that out now. So this comes back to about here on the bolt sled. That's about there. So if I pull the bolt sled all the way back, at least to that point I'll be fine. This one. Oh, if my brass comes all the way to the front here and I need to clear this gap, there might just be enough room before I hit the tank. But otherwise, I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do this. But either way, I'm going to cut this forward section of the bolt off and reattach it and basically glue the brass inside here, and that's how I'm going to connect the brass sleeve to the bolt sled that's moving back and forth. So I figured it out, and it works beautifully. I was so excited. I was testing this last night. So this is what the bolt sled looks like now. I cut pretty much straight across here on the original orange piece, and as you can see, I have the brass goes up as far as it does there, and I've slightly sanded inside here as well, just so that there's clearance when the mag comes in. I've got it held in with tape at the moment just because I was testing to see if it was at the right length, but let me show you. Okay, so here it is all fitting in place. The tank's kind of falling down a bit, but I'll glue that back in place when I'm doing it finally. So yeah, I'll just pull it back, sleeves backwards, and at that point it hits there, and so that's how I know, I can feel that I've finished the draw, because the draw's a little shorter than usual. But if you can see, I've fully exposed where the dart's going in. Then just go forwards again, and that works. So I'll be taking that tape off and gluing it in place, and then I will be gluing this in place so that it stays there when I'm putting the bolt back and forwards. And then I think really the last thing to do is to extend this barrel. The pieces of brass that I got in England would only come in I think, is it a 1 foot length? Something like this. So in order to get, you know, the full performance out of this thing, I need a longer barrel. So I will be putting two ends together. This is as much as I've been told by a friend, and then put a sleeve of the bigger 9/16 over top and kind of somehow solder it in place. So it's really important to make sure that these two sections here are as flat and as flush as possible. But once I do that, then I think I just heat it up and put solder on it, and I guess I'll let you know how it turns out. So from what I've researched, I basically need to put some solder by the join here and heat this up with some sort of blowtorch. Just, you want to make sure you don't heat it up too much so that the brass decolorizes or gets too soft, but just enough at the right point. When the brass gets to the melting temperature of the solder will turn to liquid and just suck into the gap. I've never done this before, so I'm just going to see how it goes. But safety first and everything. Obviously I'm doing this on the brickwork because we've got some fire happening.
But yeah, let's just have a go. Ah! Oh, I don't know if you saw that. It's like there. Okay, that's right. You can't blame me. It's my first time. So you can see just here is where it actually went pretty well, and the solder's melted into that gap. Over here, the solder just sort of fell off and melted on the outside. Oh, that's hot. So yeah, that's basically how to do it. I just got to keep practicing until I do it well. Okay, we're going for a second attempt. Ah, yes, son. There we go. Melted. Okay, so I think I've finished with the barrel now. I've got the middle section there, and I've got tape around it to keep it central within the Longstrike barrel. I've got less tape here because this just sits inside the small barrel here. And these three pieces of tape are much bigger because you know the diameter here is larger. So yeah, I'm just going to put it in now and see if I can get a test fire. Okay, getting the barrel in was a bit of a pain because I had to be quite careful, but I had to twist, but I got it in now, which is all good. And I decided to try and 3D print my own sort of scar or rifled barrel, just for fun, and I don't know if it's that effective. But I'm going to do a firing test now. I've only got some cut down darts, so I don't really have any workers left, but I'll shoot it off and we'll see how it does.